So now we're entering Havličkovy Sady, which is one of the lesser known parks in Prague, but from what I understand, it's really quite beautiful, maybe one of the more beautiful parks in the city. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk a little bit about a question that I'm asked by pretty much everyone that I meet here, and certainly people from back home as well, which is essentially, why am I here? It's a valid question, you know, what am I doing wandering around? I mean, living in Prague, wandering around the Czech Republic. So I've had quite a bit of time to think about this, and it was a question that I actually wasn't really able to answer for quite a long time, because the truth is that I ended up here sort of accidentally. When I originally came to Prague, I was here for a 1-month TEFL course, teaching English as a foreign language. It's like a certificate that allows you to apply for international English teaching jobs just about anywhere in the world. It was a 1-month course, and my original intention was to go back to Asia, where I had visited my sister just a few months before. You know, I have to be honest, when I arrived at Václav Havel Airport in Prague in November 2019, I don't think I would have been able to reliably locate Prague or the Czech Republic on a map. I really had no idea where I was. So really the sole reason that I chose Prague as the location for my 1-month TEFL course was I really wanted to get started as quickly as possible. And all of the TEFL courses that I could see in Asia, for example, they were all starting in like maybe late January at the earliest, some of them as late as February or March. And they were also quite expensive, much more expensive than the course that I eventually found in Prague. It turned out that my timing was perfect, because if I had waited any longer to leave the country, I would have gotten stuck in the US when the COVID lockdowns hit. And I would probably still be there today, maybe without a job, living with my parents. Sometimes I feel like the universe was kind of looking out for me a little bit and giving me this sense of urgency to leave the country right away while I had the chance, so that I could kind of begin this next chapter of my life without getting held up for potentially a year and a half or more. So I touched down in Prague in November 2019. Probably couldn't have located it on a map. I knew nothing of the language, nothing of the culture. It was a total mystery to me. I did my 1-month course in December of that year, and that was a super fun experience. It's kind of a story for another day, though. I met a lot of great people there. I just happened to get lucky and have a really great TEFL group. A bunch of people who were extremely social. We bonded really quickly, and it was just tons of fun. Probably drank a little bit too much during that time, but that's a proper introduction to Prague. After the 1-month course was over, a lot of the people from the course actually left and went back home, because they didn't really have any intentions, or they didn't have the money to stay for a longer period of time. But I stayed because I had some extra money lying around, and I really had nothing to go back to in Colorado. I had quit my job back there. I'd moved out of my apartment, so I was just ready to kind of float for a while and see where life took me. And I looked at some flights into like Southeast Asia, because I considered just taking my TEFL and moving on and maybe traveling a bit around Asia before settling down somewhere to try to teach for a while. But after spending, 6 weeks to 2 months in Prague, I had met some people. I had made a few friends. I was just kind of enjoying adapting to this new environment and learning everything that I was learning while I was in this new and sort of exotic environment. And so I just didn't feel like I needed to be in any hurry to leave. So I stayed. And at that point I was quickly approaching the end of my 90-day tourist visa. And the way it works in the Schengen region of the EU, you're allowed to stay for 90 days out of every 180 days. So if you've been there for 90 days, you have to leave and then spend 90 days outside of the Schengen region of the EU. So I would have had to go to a completely different continent. And I wasn't quite ready to leave yet. This park is surprisingly crowded for a Thursday afternoon, and the weather's not even that nice, really. So anyway, back to the story. What I decided to do in the end was go ahead and apply for a longer-term visa in the Czech Republic, and the one that I decided on is called the Živnostenský list, and it's essentially a freelance visa. So it gives you a lot of freedom to basically make money in almost any way you can think of in the Czech Republic, as long as you're not working for a single employer. And it's a year-long visa, and it basically gives you all of the privileges of a Czech national, kind of the baseline legal status for a foreigner in the country. So I went to Vienna, I put in an application for a visa, and I was told that it would take maybe 2 to 3 months maximum for the visa application to be complete. And my plan still was not necessarily to stay here and become a resident of Prague, but instead I was thinking of working a bit, making some money, and then traveling around Europe throughout the summer and the early fall. But it turned out that there was a massive historical event coming my way that would kind of change everything. So we'll talk about that in a second, but we're going to take a look at the grotto first. All right, so we're coming down into the grotto from above. Wow, look at this. This little staircase here looks very inviting. Let's walk up this way. Oh wow. Okay, we'll let them have their little moment there in the cave. So we're gonna walk up to the top level first. Okay, and we have kind of a balcony / lookout spot here. Looking down into the grotto. Oh wow, look at this. And we actually have, I think they call this an oculus. I could be completely wrong. A hole in the ceiling that lets the light through. Oculus? Yeah, I don't know, that doesn't sound right. There's a word that I'm looking for, but I can't find it. Defunct looking fountain here, where people throw their old wine corks and cigarette butts. A secret room. This is incredible. Look at this. An entire secret room with a little alcove and some graffiti sprayed all over the walls. Here it says in English, "Are you bitch?" It's an important question. Timeless question, once again. I think that was actually a quote from Socrates. He said, "Are you bitch?" One of the central questions of philosophy, actually. Very important to answer for yourself. We're now here in the lower level of the grotto. Beautiful sequence of archways. So, as I've said, my original plan was to get a Czech visa, work for a while here, save some money, and then spend the summer traveling around Europe, and then probably get on a plane and go to Asia. As everyone knows by now, something rather unusual happened in about March of 2020, and the entire world shut down. At that time, I was actually visiting my girlfriend at her home in the little Czech town of Svitavy, and I got stuck there for about 6 weeks. There's a video about that, and I'll put a link to it down in the description, so you can check that out if you want the rest of the story on that. And after escaping from Svitavy back to Prague, I was kind of just in limbo for a while because all the embassies had shut down, so there was no progress on my visa. And honestly, I had no idea whether my application had even been received by the embassy. So I was living here illegally at the moment, and actually working illegally as well, because I was working for a Czech primary school in Prague, and mostly teaching lessons online at that moment. By the time the summer came, I had really spent quite a bit of time in Prague. I had worked there. I had started to set down some roots, sort of gotten a feel for the city. Basically, I was starting to like it. I was enjoying the relationships that I was building there. Prague in the spring and summer is absolutely gorgeous. Temporarily in the summer, the COVID restrictions were lifted, so every weekend, crowds of people would gather along the river in the boat bars and everywhere else, really. It was becoming a really interesting place to be, a lot of fun. I decided to extend my stay for a little bit longer, and at the time it still was very uncertain as to when the rest of the world would open up, when normal travel would be a possibility again. So it just seemed like a prudent thing to do, to invest in this life I was building in this location a little bit more before I tried to kind of break everything into a million pieces again and then start over new in a new location. So in September or October of 2020, I started to transition from being kind of like a tourist or a temporary visitor to being something more like a permanent resident of the city. I signed a year-long lease. I accepted a handful of private English and guitar students. I just kind of hunkered down. And right around that time, the coronavirus situation in the Czech Republic was really escalating for the first time, much more than in March. And I kind of just decided, all right, I'm spending the winter here, make the best of it, and try to get some work, try to build some relationships, try to make some friends, and I've been here ever since. So long story short, when people ask me why did I come to the Czech Republic, the honest answer to that is that I had no better reason in the beginning than just coming to a new place that seemed interesting for a temporary 1-month TEFL course. And I really had no inkling at the time that I would still be here a year and a half, 2 years later. You know, the honest answer to why am I in Prague, you might say I got stuck here. But in the meantime, when you spend a year and a half in one location, you just naturally start to set down roots in that place. As long as you're, if you're trying to meet people, if you're open, if you're friendly, if you have good intentions and goodwill towards the place that you're in and the people that you're meeting, naturally you start to make connections and you start to make friends, you start to learn the language a bit, and you just kind of get used to the feeling of being in that location. And so over time, I've kind of transitioned away from this feeling like, okay, I'm in Prague just because that's the way fate worked out. And probably if I could have a choice, I would choose to be somewhere else. That was my perspective all the way up until a few months ago. But as a result of being here for longer and talking to lots and lots of people that have chosen to be here for various reasons, I maybe got really lucky. For many reasons, it's an excellent place to set down roots. It's an excellent place to have a home base, even if your ultimate goal, like mine is to travel around the world, to travel around Europe, and to be a little bit more free, a little bit more location independent. I think Prague is still a wonderful place to set out from. And there are a few reasons for that. It's kind of right in the sweet spot where it's not a super huge city. It's not like New York City or Hong Kong or Berlin or Moscow or London, for example. And a lot of people hate that about Prague. A lot of people really don't appreciate the fact that it's a capital city that in some ways feels like a village, feels like a small town. But it just makes it a lot more livable. It's a manageable city. You feel like you can get around. You feel like public transit will take you just about anywhere you want to go in the city within a reasonable amount of time, and you don't have to make like 7 different connections in order to get there. Much of the city is also walkable, so you really don't need any kind of vehicle here. You can get around on the trams, buses, or just on foot most of the time. It's also an incredibly safe city. This is something that I actually heard from many people early on when they talk about benefits of living in Prague. And it's something that the longer you spend here, the more you really start to feel the truth of that statement. It really just feels like everybody living here is kind of just going about their daily lives. In larger cities, especially cities as touristy as Prague is, sometimes you get a feeling like there's an entire population of people in that location that are just looking for victims to scam. Of course, there's a little bit of that here. In any big city, you're going to find people like that. But I would say it's really quite drastically and noticeably less apparent here than it is in other large European cities that I've been in. For example, Rome or Barcelona. There are definitely people that are begging in one way or another. But for the most part, everybody seems to be doing pretty well. I think that's related to the fact that the Czech Republic actually has the lowest unemployment, I think, of any country in Europe. It's relatively easy for someone who wants to emigrate to the Czech Republic from another country. It's relatively easy for them to go through that process and at least get a temporary working visa to be able to stay there for a year or a couple years. There is some red tape, but it's not as overwhelming as even in the United States or many other countries that I've heard about. I'm concluding this video a couple hours later. I'll give you a little parting view of Old Town Square, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.